Hello, and welcome to Save Your Sanity Help for Toxic Relationships. I'm Dr. Roberta Shaler, and I help people recognize and break the bonds of emotional abuse. In this episode, we're going to be talking about living with emotional abuse. You may have done that with a parent. You may have repeated it with a partner. You may have just met an errant partner and be experiencing it for the first time. We want to talk about this in some depth because it is toxic, it is unhealthy, it has long term effects, and it's very important to recognize what they are and to have some ways of thinking, is this happening to me? So, we're going to work with that this evening in this episode. When we're looking for help, you can always find me at For Relationship Help. And I am so happy that you have found me now, and you can find more things, my free checklist, a lot of information at forrelationshiphelp.com. If you'd like other examples of the podcast, other episodes, you can go to saveyoursanitypodcast.com. And if you'd like to support the work and get it out to more people, I'm always delighted when people make a one-time or a monthly donation at patreon.com/saveyoursanity. Patreon.com/saveyoursanity. So we're going to talk about emotional abuse, living with emotional abuse. And first of all, we need to know, well, what is it? Because it can be very hard to recognize. And in that being hard to recognize, it can be because it's subtle. It can be it's not that bad, you think. It could be intermittent. You could have really good periods of time and then bang, there's something nasty going on. Or it could be overt. It could be just constantly coming at you, very manipulative. But it's all an attempt to control you by discrediting you, isolating you, and silencing you. So, I wanted to share with you my definition of emotional abuse, which is controlling another person by criticizing, embarrassing, shaming, blaming, discounting, dismissing, depriving, or denying their rights, needs, wants, thoughts, feelings, and equality. Now, that covers a lot of ground. I'm sure you would agree. So, think about it. Anything going on in your life where someone is endeavoring to control you by criticizing, embarrassing, shaming, blaming, discounting, dismissing, depriving, or denying your rights, your needs, your wants, your thoughts, your feelings, and your equality. Is that happening in any way to you? Has it happened before? Did you have a parent who was an abuser in that regard? And don't be afraid to say that was abusive. That is abusive. I know it sounds like such a terrible charge, but we really have to recognize it for what it is and when it is happening. So I've done lots of episodes on various aspects of emotional abuse, but I'll just go over a few of them. There are episodes that talk specifically about these or give you lists of things. So please go to Save Your Sanity podcast, look for more so that you can go more in depth. But it is emotional abuse when someone is constantly name calling or putting you down or gaslighting you, which is defining your reality for you, using projection, where what they're afraid is true of themselves, they say is true of you. So they project it on you like a movie projector. They may be shaming, as I said in the definition, or criticizing, or constantly blaming and being very judgmental. They could compare you to other people, other times, other relationships they've had in a negative way. They could withhold themselves emotionally, withhold talking to you, withhold information from you, withhold affection, make affection conditional on whether you're doing what they want you to do in the moment. They will discount you, dismiss your ideas, degrade you in front of other people, humiliate you in front of other people. All of these are emotionally abusive. I know when I was a little girl, it constantly happened to me. Constantly. It was my father's way of feeling that he had the upper hand. And he would particularly like to be emotionally abusive in front of other people and then just think it was funny. And that might have happened to you too. And as a result, when other people say negative things about you, you kind of expect it. And you have to heal from that. That is not okay, is it? Know that you can heal from it, you can recover, and you can say no to emotional abuse in the future. It's not simple, it is not easy, but it is possible. And that's very important information because if we feel that we can get out from under that after maybe years of having it, then we can perk up. We can see the possibility of our life. We can see the potential in our life. And that is so important. And as I said, I've done lots of episodes on particular topics like gaslighting or triangulation or projection or introjection, all kinds of things, blame shifting, past blasting, all kinds of things that are emotionally abusive. But I really hope that you will take it to heart and recognize that if you were emotionally abused, it is not your fault. It has very little to do with you. You were just handy. You were the handy person available that the other person could control or try to control. There was nothing wrong with you. There was nothing intrinsically wrong with you. It is the other person's problem that they visited upon you. Can you get that really clearly? Because sometimes we get into a mindset that says, oh, well, I must have deserved it, or there must have been some truth in it, but when you have a pattern of that, know that it rests squarely on the other person when you were a child. Definitely rests on the other person and their inability to cope with life in any other way than having someone to destroy or damage. And really let that sink in because you may have lived with the idea that there was something wrong with you and they really wanted you to. But, it is wonderful to say, no, I have looked at all of the things that I am and all the things that I do, and it is not true. It is not true. Maybe occasionally it's true, but of me as a person in time and over time, it is not true. And then you can begin to realize it is the other person. They were meeting their own needs, as any good hijacker will, any narcissist will, any person with narcissistic tendencies will. It's all about them.com. So they have to have someone to degrade, someone to make small, someone to vent their anger at, whether it's rational or not, usually not, but they're looking for a victim. They're looking for prey, someone who will take it. And as I said earlier, it sometimes starts in very subtle ways. Maybe much of the time it's subtle, but you feel it. You can feel the energy of it. You can feel the discomfort of it. You can feel the way that I just know something's off. I can't put my finger on it, but I know something's off. This is not okay with me on any level. And really listen to that voice within you. Don't take all the blame for it. Sure, be self-reflective. Say, did I have a part in this? Clean that up if you think you did. But don't take it all on. There are two people there, and the other is a perpetrator. So really understand that. And as I said, don't be afraid to call it abuse because that's what it is. So I was thinking about what is it like? What could I put to it that would help us understand? And as I thought about that, it came to me that emotional abuse is like having black mold in your basement or any kind of mold for that matter, because many kinds of mold are black. But if you just think about it, you know, you attribute symptoms to other things. You've got mold growing in your house, you don't even realize it. So you get a cold, or you have congestion, or you're feeling under the weather, and you attribute it to all kinds of other things that seem more relevant to the moment. But still, it keeps happening, and you keep feeling that way. And then you start perhaps to search. And here you find that this silent spreading mold in your basement where there was water, or up the walls, or behind the water heater. It's just sitting there affecting you every day. And it's, as I said, silent and spreading, but kind of underhanded. It's doing its thing, but it's affecting you, and you don't even know it's there. And it's toxic, it's unhealthy, and it has long-term effects, and we have to clear them out. So in thinking of this metaphor of emotional abuse is like black mold, a simile, if you like, kind of a metaphor, I just want to talk to you a bit about just describing what having toxic mold in your house is like. And then you think about, well, is that like having a hijackal, an emotional abuser in your life? So these things have short and long-term effects. So you're going to begin with some irritation. Just maybe mild irritation, maybe a few outbursts, a few upsets, but things kind of calm down perhaps. And so you don't really notice that they're chained together because the situations may have been different. So you get irritation. And then you begin to get fatigue. You're just tired. It's too much. It's exhausting. And you begin to kind of notice that no matter how much sleep you get, you're not rested. Do you see the similarities already? And then with the mold, you can get headaches of supposedly unknown origin. The mold can create that within your body. You may then become tense because you don't know what's going on. And you may develop aches and pains out of the blue. Aches and pains is a result of the mold. Out of the blue, aches and pains is a result of the emotional abuse. And you may find your mood changing. With that irritability, you may have mood changes. That definitely happens when people have mold in their houses. So the short-term things kind of look like that when you have mold in your house. But what are the long-term pieces? Well, insomnia. Strange, but mold causes insomnia. So does emotional abuse. It causes memory loss. You get tired of remembering because every time you try to tell your truth, you're told you're wrong. It didn't happen that way. It isn't important. You don't matter. Who wanted to hear from you? But if you have mold in your house, you'll find that it's fatiguing, and it'll create insomnia, and you will have memory loss. You may have trouble concentrating. That's what mold does to you. Similarly, you have trouble concentrating because you're hypervigilant when you have emotional abuse going on. You've got one ear open all the time to, am I safe? Is it okay? Similarly with the mold, you are having trouble concentrating because you're getting brain fog, and you may be confused. Certainly, an emotional abuser will confuse you with gaslighting or attempt to, and mold will produce confusion, and you don't even know where it's coming from, much like a covert hijackal. Then it will weaken your immune system. I've spoken about that several times. The mold will do it, so will the abuse. Very straightforward, isn't it? How the mold in your house is similar to an emotional abuser in your house or in your life. And this will cause damage to your organs, wear and tear and damage. And then it can also cause brain damage, that you just cannot think anymore. You just cannot piece things together anymore. You feel like you're losing it. And don't you also feel that way when you're with someone who's emotionally abusive? After a while, it's like your circuits all get shorted out, and you just can't put ideas together, and if you did put ideas together, you'd be told you're wrong, and if you did speak up about what was wrong, they would tell you that, "No, that's not the case. You're the problem." So when we have this kind of silent killer in the basement, coming up the walls, seeping up the walls, creating this mold, giving you all these symptoms, we have things similar to that when we live with emotional abuse. And if we had emotional abuse in our family when we were little, it's all we knew. We don't have another model for family than the one that we had when we, especially when we're under the age of 4. That's the way it is. That's what family is. That's what home is. And the child calibrates that and says, well, this must be it. I don't like it, but this must be it. And so it is very, very important for us to realize these similarities because we get used to it when we are raised with it. It just seems familiar. It's unhealthy, but it seems familiar. It's unhealthy, but it seems some way almost comforting because it's home. And that's why people who are raised in emotionally abusive homes will easily fall prey to hijackals in their first romantic relationships. They may see the red flags, but they ignore it because subconsciously there's something comfortable and familiar about it. So, as I say, they're comfortably uncomfortable. And so we go into those situations until we learn better. And when we learn better, we do better. And that's just the way it is. Don't ever beat yourself up about, I should have seen it. I should have seen it earlier. No, you see it when you can see it, when you're willing to see it, when it makes sense to you to see it. Don't let people say, well, why did you put up with it for so long? People are always happy to blame you, aren't they? And if you've been blamed repeatedly, sometimes you think you're to blame anyway. So when they do it, you don't expect anything differently. But it's not okay. It's not okay on any level. And just like with the black mold, you don't get sick right away. You kind of tolerate it, you put up with it, you have little moments, but it just doesn't seem to go away and it keeps getting a little bit worse because it takes that exposure to infect you and affect you. And so that exposure over time changes you, just like exposure over time to an emotional abuser changes you. And then it depends on how much mold there is. It depends how frequently the abuser abuses. It depends how frequently you take it in. Sometimes you don't. Very important analysis and analogies here, because if you had a home in which you were emotionally abused, and then you get into a relationship in which you're being emotionally abused, you were pre-sensitized to it. Just like if you'd been in a home before that had mold in the basement, and then you move to a new home that also has mold in the basement, it just seems to be the same. And that same thing will happen if you had an emotionally abusive or neglectful home. And then how close you are to it. If your bedroom is 2 stories up and in the opposite corner of the house to the mold, you are less likely to be sleeping in the effects of the mold than if you happen to have the basement bedroom. Same thing with emotional abuse. Maybe you're the golden child and you were not abused at home. You could do no wrong because hijackals always play favorites with their children. And so you observed other people having emotional abuse. But you were saved from it because you were the golden child. You were the perfect one, but you observed it. So you were close to it, but not as close to it as being on the receiving end of it. And you observed it. And of course, each one of us is different, just like with trauma. So our bodies react differently to mold. And so our minds also take it in differently. And the same way with emotional abuse. It's quite a good analogy, isn't it? That emotional abuse really is like having mold in the basement of your home. And you can't see it at first, but you in time you do, and it's beginning to make you sick, or it may have already made you sick. And at that point, you need to focus on getting well or getting out of there because it's unhealthy, it's unsanitary, it is not good for your sanity. And the thing with mold is you can have it treated and it may reoccur at any time. Or the mold is hidden in other places and growing in other places, and you treat it in one place, and it's like playing whack-a-mole. You beat it down in one place, and it pops up in another. And many times when you're with an emotional abuser, it's very much like that because it's quiet for a while, then it pops up somewhere else in another form, and you didn't see it coming, you weren't expecting it, and it hurts even more. So many times when you're in a home that has recurring mold, it's best to get away. And the same thing is true about being in a relationship with a hijackal. Everybody's different. Every relationship is different. The dynamics of every relationship are different. So when I'm working with my clients, I'm constantly calibrating how is it for them? And if you'd like to be one of my clients, I have an introductory offer for new clients at beaclient.com, only $97 for a full 1-hour session. Beaclient.com. If you'd prefer to join with others, you're welcome to join my emerging empowered community at joinintoday.com. Come on over, joinintoday.com, and we can talk and you can talk with other people there. Because having people on the journey with you, knowing that you're not alone, hijackals want you to feel alone. They want you to feel isolated and marginalized. And that's why I created the Emerging Empowered Community, so that you would gather together with other people who know what it is you're speaking about. They're not going to say, well, it's your bed, you lie in it. They're not going to say, why haven't you left by now? They understand. So go to joinintoday.com to become a part of the Emerging Empowered Community. So we're looking at emotional abuse, and I've told you what it is. And I want to share with you my definition of a toxic relationship, which is any adult relationship where interactions are verbally and emotionally abusive, intentionally damaging, controlling, or otherwise lacking in equality, reciprocity, and mutuality. Those relationships are toxic. They are very, very detrimental to your physical, emotional, and mental health. They are adult relationships where there is verbal and emotional abuse, just like I've been speaking of, where someone is intentionally damaging or controlling or not expressing the three must haves of a healthy adult relationship, which are, as in episode 115, equality, reciprocity, and mutuality. So these are very important things to recognize. And so just like that black mold growing in your basement or behind your water tank or under your kitchen sink, you may not notice it at first, but you're uneasy and you start finding yourself not feeling well in a variety of ways. I hope that you will notice when that's happening to you. I hope you will take that to heart and say, I need to be doing something about this. This is not good. Go over to my website, forrelationshiphelp.com. There are 4 free checklists there. One on emotional integrity or personal integrity, one on passive aggressive behaviors, one on am I in a healthy relationship, and the last one, am I in a toxic relationship? So important to know. If you're new to my work and you don't really understand what a hijackal is or you'd like to, you can go to hijackals.com or find it on my website, forrelationshiphelp.com. I have a free ebook for you. It's called How to Spot a Hijackal. And the good news is that you can get it in an ebook form and or you can listen to it, because I also read it in case you like to listen when you're walking or working or jogging, perhaps. So I hope this analogy between emotional abuse and mold in your basement of your home will stick with you because it's pervasive, it's damp, it's cloying, it's silent, and it is so damaging. So think about this. Are you living with emotional abuse? Is your relationship or any relationship toxic? Did you have that from a parent as well as a partner? You may then, if that's the case, find that you also have friends like that, or siblings or family members like that. And once you recognize that you are being emotionally abused, you can then take steps to say, no more. This is not going to continue. So I hope you will take very good care of yourself until we speak again, because you're precious and you matter. Talk soon. Good evening, everybody. I'm happy to see you. Let's see who's here. Jenny from Montreal. Welcome. Haven't seen you post before. John, hi. I'm glad you're here too. Wow, there's a big one. Sugar Wamajamas. Hi, hello, Elma in New York and Ursel. Yay, it's Monday indeed. Amor, welcome back. Anna, welcome. I haven't seen you post before. So let's see what we have. John says, emotional abuse seems like it is like breathing for the hijackals. It is. It fuels them. It's like food for them too. Survival, then I reacted like I was in a war. You do. And that's really important in that case to listen to my episode on reactive abuse, because that's a very important concept. They get so much power. If they did not lie, I could say I chose to allow it. Yes, yes. Um, but reactive abuse, let me just remind you, I did a whole episode on it. You can find it wherever you like to get your podcasts, or go to saveyoursanitypodcast.com. Reactive abuse is sneaky because a person abuses you and they poke at you and they know where your vulnerabilities are or where you get annoyed easily. And they poke and they poke and they poke. And then you react and you get angry and maybe you say things and they set you up for that. And then they turn on you and say, see how abusive you are. And really, it's reactive abuse to their abuse, but they will never see that. So they say, there you go. You're the abusive one. Mary, hello. If you really know what's going on, but this book, Why Men Hate Women, it's on Amazon. The author is talking about an industry of men that hold seminars on manipulation and control. Yes, they do. And there are societies, the Red Pill Society, we'll talk about that. There are several organizations. You're absolutely right, Mary. Anna, hi. Haven't seen you for a week or two. Amor says it's going to watch it later. It can't load. All right. Well, we hope to see you again. Um, Sky, hi. Emotional abuse is misuse in an aberrant way. It's absolutely true. You know, I used to think it was so apt that when I lived in Canada, the government of Alberta used to stamp everything, all their pens and pencils and rulers and everything, and it said misuse is abuse. And it is true. Misuse is abuse. Absolutely true. John says, my woman hijackal accused me of hating women. Complete lie. I respect women. They're built for two. I was around so many women hijackals, 5 sisters and a mom, 5 aunts. That's a good crew of hijackals. I recognize that. I came from my father's family. They were all hijackals, male and female. All hijackals. Amazing. Anna says yes about how it affects your immune system. She said, yes, I have autoimmune disease. Sky loved the mold metaphor, a slow death. Absolutely. Ursula says, why does my narc mom abandon me so much as a child? Well, your narc mom would have been looking after her own needs, her own wants, and you would have been a competition for her time. And hijackals, narcissistic hijackals, any hijackals, they're always in competition with everybody, including their children. It's very, very sad. They don't have much love to give, but they have many uses for you. And as a child, they use you too. And so they will abandon you in favor of their own interests. They want to go out, they want to pursue a career, they want to do anything but be a parent, unless the child is making them look good and they can put on a good show. But the rest of the time, they can be extremely neglectful. And that's the parents doing. It has nothing to do with the child. And as I said during the broadcast, it's really important to get that. The fact that a parent behaved badly toward you has nothing to say about who you are and everything to say about who they are. So don't take it on. I know that's easy for me to say, but I had to work through all this stuff too. I had 2 hijackal parents and I'm an only child. That's why I do this work. I have walked every ugly minute of every part of the journey, and there wasn't any help for me. When I reached out for help, people would say, "Well, how dare you say that about your parents?" Or, you made your bed, you lie in it. And there wasn't any help. Back then, they weren't recognizing things as narcissistic tendencies. They weren't doing any of that. In fact, abuse was seldom spoke of. So that becomes really important for us to catch up with that, because maybe you're 50 or older, and at that time parents were not in the same mindset as parents of today, or most of them, especially the ones who aren't giving their kids guns at 15 years old. Sugar Woman Jama said, "Thank you. I came from a seething, writhing nest of hijackals, but always, of course, believed it was me for 58 years, but no more. Yay, 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 and high five to you. Yes, let's disabuse ourselves of the notion that we ever deserved abuse. We never did. No one ever does. You know, abuse is not what happens in prison. That is a consequence. No one deserves to be under the control of a manipulative human, and that's abusive." Tracy, hi. Says, "I am at such a loss, no clear thought, no idea, sick, still struggling, no family contact." That's very difficult when you get out of an abusive relationship, Tracy, and I'm sorry that you're having difficulty walking the journey, but I'm so glad that you were able to walk away. So important for us all. It's not easy to walk away. It is not an easy road once you start walking. But boy, what's behind you is much less pleasant than what can be ahead of you. So I hope that you can hold that idea. John said, "Emotional abuse made me choose to put others ahead of me." Sure, that was the whole idea. Do what they wanted and forget what you wanted. The physical damage is nerve damage, autoimmune disease. Made my bones shake. Yes, it will. It truly will. So many things, everything's interconnected, our mind, our body, our nerve endings, everything is a system. So nothing is unaffected when we are being abused, and it's important. Anna said, exactly, I have no before the abuse. Right, me neither. But I sure do have a great after the abuse, and I hope you do too. Oh, Sugar Wamachama says, "Black mold, childhood bedroom. 6 kids have autoimmune disease, self included." There you go. Same analogy. 6 kids in an emotionally abusive home. Everyone affected differently, but all affected. John says, "My narc mom was all about her. They're schemers, everything about her. And if it was not, she would neglect me." Well, that's exactly it. And it answers the earlier question, why would a mother neglect you? Well, it's only what, in that case, a mother, only what she wants. She feels entitled to have her life. And if you are interfering in that, She sees you as something to get out of the way. You need to get out of the way. Therefore, you're useless. There, you shouldn't be around. And so we get those messages even before we have language. You know, when we really think about it, the first 4 years of our life, especially the first 2.5, we didn't have words. We're just taking in the looks, taking in the facial expression, taking in the look in the eyes, taking in the tone of voice, taking in the posture. How did they look at us? Taking in how they felt when they held us. That's how we learned whether or not we're worthy and we're wanted and all of that. And if you have prickly people, hijackals, well, they love to take you out and say, "Look what I created." But at home, there's nobody to show it to, so you're a nuisance. Or you're somebody for them to take out their anger on. And that's just really sad. But it's important, which is why I wanted to do this topic tonight. It is so important to make that separation. That's who they were, not who you were, regardless of what they told you. So important. Oh, Sky says the title of the video should be changed to Dying with Emotional Abuse, Not Living. Yes, but then that gives rise to a whole lot of other ideas about what the video might be about. Absolutely. Oh, I'm glad, Ursel, you like the analogy. Sky says the house with the hijackal should be condemned as a health hazard. Well, I don't think there would be many people here saying, oh no. I think we all understand that it is a health hazard to be emotionally abused, and hijackals specialize in emotional abuse. Secondarily, or maybe even ahead of emotional abuse, whichever way you look at it, verbal abuse is usually how it begins, which is emotional abuse. And then some of them proceed to physical abuse and sexual abuse. Some of them go off in spiritual abuse and financial abuse. They will find a way to abuse, and many times, many ways. So we have to be on top of that to really understand. And they are all health hazards. You're absolutely right, Sky. Sugar Wamajama says, is it accurate to believe that there are more emotional abusers than physical abusers? Oh, yes, absolutely. Emotional abusers want to stay under the radar. They don't do things that you can call the police for. Yes, way more emotional abusers than physical abusers. She says, my husband has struck me once in 36 years, but does narc behavior every day. Yeah, that's what they do. And they teach us to put up with it, or at least they hope that we do, that we will get so worn down, torn down, and exhausted from being put down that we will become smaller. We will become able to be restrained, able to be compressed, and we won't cause them problems. And even when we don't cause them problems, they still sometimes will yell and carry on. So I I hope that you can clearly see that emotional abuse is insidious and it's very dangerous to your health, and really a good thing to put in the rearview mirror if you possibly can. John says grieving emotional abuse is important. That way we can have closure, then have to grieve the hijackals, aka human beings, or supposed to. Well, yes. We have to grieve for our last childhood, or the fact that we didn't have a hallmark mother or father. That's important to grieve. It's not something to get lost in, but it is important to grieve. You know, you only get one mom or dad. Sometimes you get lucky and you get a great step parent, but you only have one, and sometimes you get a defective, dysfunctional one, a dysregulated one, and you can't send them back to the factory because they were here first, even though you'd like to. And it really feels like a loss. Absolutely. Why didn't I get a mom who loved me? Why didn't I get a mom who wanted me? Why didn't I get a mom who was interested in me? But the child doesn't think that. The child thinks, what's wrong with me? Why don't they love me? Why don't they want me? There must be something terribly wrong with me. Remember, until we're 5 or 6, our brain is growing till we're 30, developing. And until we're 5 or 6, basically, we're just vibrating sacs of emotional nerve endings. We are not, that's how we start out. And so everything emotional that happens to us shapes us incredibly because we don't know what the words mean. And we have no experience in life to compare what we're experiencing to. So it's very important for us to see. John says mold is gross. I think we'd all agree. Sky says sunlight can kill mold. Same for the hijackal. Yeah, same for vampires. Yes, shed light, surround yourself with light, be light, do the work, come out of the darkness, whatever kinds of additional metaphors we want. You're right on for sure, Sky. Let's let that sunlight kill the mold. Sugar Wamajama says, my daughter, 27, and I are estranged. She only allows me to speak about this moment or the future. I'm frozen. Well, how like a hijack call, right? Hijackals have this desire to never want to talk about the past because it's over. And what's wrong with you that you want to talk about the past? We're only in the moment that we're creating. And that's because that's the only moment that they can control. They can't do anything about the past. They don't want to own it. They don't want to admit anything. They won't take ownership of it. So they want to stay in this moment or the future. Problem with the future when you're dealing with a hijackal is they do a tremendous amount of future faking. I did a whole episode on that. Hijackals like to say, oh, one day we'll do this, or we'll have this, or this wonderful thing will occur. And so you go, oh, there's hope. It's wonderful. Yes, I see it. I'm with you. It never happens. It's just a ploy to get you to go along with them or to feel encouraged for the moment because they want something else. They are great future fakers. So, Sugar Wamajama, I would even say that when your daughter wants to talk about the future, she's future faking to get what she wants. She's not probably as interested in you. And I would just, certainly enjoy what bits of the relationship you do, but then be very, very aware that she's estranged by her choice. She's the one who created estrangement, probably, although you don't say that, I'm guessing. But she does allow you to speak to her. Oh, how hijackally is that? I will deign to allow you to kiss my ring as long as you play by my rules. Not feeling it. Are you? I bet you're not. Like, are you kidding yourself? You're welcome. Oh, Sugar Warmajama said she had hijackal grandparents and father. I had hospitalization and therapy weekly. Well, there you go. 3 models, maybe 5 models of hijackals. That'll do it. Absolutely. John says, thank you for reminding us we cannot help. They are so selfish. The silence me must have been through, must have been deafening. Yeah, well, the only silence that I experienced was because I spent so much time alone. I was one of the original latchkey kids long before that term existed. So I had silence, and the silence from any kind of love, or anything that you would think of as love from one of the parents was, in fact, deafening. You're absolutely right. Tanya, hi. Is there a way to reverse autoimmune in an emotional way since that's how we've got it? That's a really good question, and there are many things that you can do. There are lots of physical things you can do about autoimmune, but you can reverse much of it when you get out of the situations and you get good help, because you won't have a need to have your body be reacting in that way. It's very slow, just in the same way that it came. But I have heard of many people who have really reduced their symptoms, if not eradicated symptoms. It takes a very long time, and you have to be very vigilant and away from it. And also give your body what it needs, doing something like the autoimmune protocol diet, things like that, to make sure that you're not giving it things that it can't handle or won't handle well. But yes, you can make a great number of strides by getting good emotional support, help, or therapy. Absolutely. The leave plan is in progress. Spent 3 years secretly learning a trade to support myself after the divorce. Silent but leaving. Powerful. Good for you. All right. Noel, hello. Lots of new people posting tonight. That's great. Toward the end of our 4-year relationship, I couldn't keep track of every horrible thing he said or did. I was in a fog. When I broke up with him, it felt foggy too, like I was out of my body. Yeah, you've gotten used to living in the chaos and confusion. That's what happens. And then when you get out, it's like, what do I do now? I'm used to chaos and confusion. And you're kind of left up in the air for a while. So I can understand that it would have been foggy because there's a lot of healing that has to happen. And, last episode I made the distinction, I'll make it again for those of you who weren't here, that there's a difference between healing and recovering, in my opinion. Healing is when the wound is slowly going back together and, it's hurts, but it hurts a little less every day. And if you take really good care of the wound, it stays without infection, and slowly the skin closes up and bones go back together, and all of that happens. Recovery is what you do after the trauma of the need for healing, to say, all right, I've put the wound behind me. It has healed. Now, how do I want to recover my life? How do I want to reclaim my power and rebuild my life? And so recovery and healing are different stages, in my opinion. When I'm working with my clients, I make that distinction. And if you have wanted to work with me, remember I said in the episode, go to beaclient.com and we can get started. Oh, good. Sugar Mama Jama, she's not feeling it. Okay, good. Great. Tanya on meds now because you got out of the abuse. Good. And after that, hopefully you can withdraw from the meds and rebuild your life, and things will be easier for you. Good question, Gwen. But won't the grief of leaving make your autoimmune stuff worse? For a little bit. Sometimes when you take a medication, you feel all the side effects of the medication, but eventually it takes care of the original condition. And then you don't have to take the medication and you don't have the original condition. But grieving of leaving is usually overcome by the joy of not having the stress. So the equation is a little bit different. And as far as making your autoimmune stuff worse, yes, you'll have more anxiety, you'll have a little more uncertainty, but then you will carve out a life that allows you to feel safe, and it will allow you to feel less anxious and put you back in control of your life. So you may feel worse for a little while, but you will definitely feel better in the long run. Oh, Tanya says AIP is very tough. That's the autoimmune protocol. Yeah, I do it and I'm very happy with it. But for many people, it is tough. For those who might want to know, there's very low carbohydrates. There's no grains, no beans, no seeds of any kind, including cacao seeds or coffee seeds, no sugar, no gluten, no dairy, lots and lots of things, but feel much better. Which one do I recommend? Well, I just follow the basic autoimmune protocol, and I work with a nutritionist, so it has to be tailored for you. But I like to always get a professional involved, so I did that. So I've been on it for quite a while now. It made a huge difference, a huge difference. But, I was ahead of the game. I already was gluten-free and dairy-free and sugar-free and soy-free before I started. Sugar Wama Jama says, no, leaving stops my body from storing trauma. Stored trauma causes the illness, and the black mold made darn sure. Yeah. Can autoimmune be like alcoholic DTs, only a different addiction? No, not really. I know what you're meaning, withdrawal and all of that, John, but no, not really. And Tanya said, I didn't grieve leaving, I felt joy. And I think that's what most people actually feel. So the fact that you played on your own team and you got yourself away from abuse is a wonderful feeling, truly is. You know, I may have had those parents, but of course I also had a part I chose. My first husband was also the same. You know, there were wonderful things involved, like butcher knives and all kinds of things. So, you know, it takes a long journey to realize that you didn't deserve it. It shouldn't be happening to you, and you have the right to say no. And no matter what your exit plan is or how long your exit plan is, having an exit plan gives you hope, gives you purpose. And that can be very, very important. Yes, and Tanya said the ARP diet, no nightshades, no, that's potatoes, eggplant, tomatoes, and peppers. None of those. You can't have those either. So Sugar Wamajama said, lonely feels delicious compared to trauma, pain, suppression, and trauma. Just for a little while, friends will help us through it. The non hijackals will be glad to. Yeah, absolutely the case. Um, Tanya said, I had joy because I realized I wasn't crazy. It was them, not me. Yes, wonderful. That's just an amazing thing to recognize. And when you really take that into your body and say, it really wasn't me, you can breathe again. You can begin to breathe again. So many things to look at about living with emotional abuse. And if you recognize that you have lived with it now, what would you like to do about it? How would you like to recover from it, heal from it? Do you need an exit plan? Do you need help to see how to do it? Do you need support? You can go to beaclient.com and we will certainly do that. And I'm happy to walk with you, or come on over to the Emerging Empowered community and all of us will walk together. Go to joinintoday.com. I'm so glad that you were here. I hope that you'll come back. Please feel free to invite your friends. Explore all the options on YouTube. My YouTube channel is FOR Relationship Help, HELP. You can go to my website, same name, For Relationship Help, and you'll find so many things there that are resources for you. Sugar Wamajama says, should we try to show a hijackal spouse their past disordered of their parents? They're usually not interested because it's not about them. And they don't believe, they cannot allow themselves to believe that there's anything wrong with them, that they have a flaw, or that they are contributing poorly to the relationship. So each case is a little bit different, but, you know, sometimes it can be helpful to say, you know, I think you had a rough time with your mom or your dad, and see what happens. Just open the door a little bit. Don't open the door the whole way because it could get slammed in your face. Tanya says, this program has helped me so much. I'm glad. That's why I do it. So I'm very happy to hear that. And I will be here next Monday. Remember to subscribe so you will get a notice to know what the topic is each Monday evening at 7 Pacific. If you're on the Facebook page, hijackals, facebook.com/hijackals, or if you're on the Facebook page for Save Your Sanity podcast, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification button. If you're on YouTube, if you're on Facebook, just like the page and you will see it. Thanks everybody for joining me and for the support you've given to each other. And I'll look forward to seeing you next week. Take good care. Good night.